Hi, everybody. This is Nicholas. I work for a monitoring and evaluation firm based in Charlottesville, Virginia, and my research interests include security and peace building in Francophone Africa. So this research project is called The Future of Development Programming in Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is a landlocked country in West Africa, home to about 20 million people. One of the least developed in the world, the country has faced mounting insecurity since 2015, including waves of violent extremism that have left thousands dead and hundreds of thousands displaced. So my research question was the following. Despite the tens of millions of dollars invested by national governments and development partners towards peace building in Burkina Faso, why are grassroots resiliency programs showing meager results in conflict prevention and resolution? So based on my previous work experiences, I developed the following hypothesis. The scale and frequency of conflict events has become too significant for grassroots resiliency programming to achieve desired outcomes. For this project, I used the ACLED public dataset, which tracks conflict events across the world. The dataset includes key variables on violent conflict events such as protests, attacks, and battles. The three most useful variables for my analysis were event ID, a simple count of which can determine the frequency of conflict events, fatalities, which can be used to determine the scale of the event in terms of lives lost, actor one, which indicates the main actor recorded as responsible for instigating each event, and inter one, which marks the type of interaction. The following findings are all based on descriptive statistics found in the ACLED dataset. Both the number of fatal conflict events and the sum of fatalities associated with them increased dramatically between 2010 and 2020. Between 2015 and 2016, after the overthrow of the Burkina government, the number of fatal conflict events increased from 14 to 23, or a 64% increase, while the number of fatalities associated with these events rose from 23 in 2015 to 81 in 2016. Or a 252% increase. Incidentally, this was only the tip of the iceberg in the explosion of violence to come. Both the scale and frequency of conflict events has risen exponentially every year since, peaking in 2019, in which 393 events occurred and over 2,200 people perished as a result. Needless to say, violence is on the rise and is projected to increase based on the statistics from August 2020, which you can see in this figure. The most affected area in Burkina Faso is the Sahel region of the country, which shares borders with neighboring countries Mali and Niger, located in the north. Since 2010, the Sahel region has witnessed the most fatal conflict events in the country, 377 in total. Over 2,400 people have died in the region as a result of conflict over the past decade. And in 2019 alone, the Sahel region accounted for nearly half of the fatalities in the entirety of Burkina Faso. The map displayed here shows that conflict in the Soum province is both the deadliest and the most widespread. More than 1,600 people have died over the past 10 years in an area roughly the size of a large county in the United States. Violence does occur elsewhere, but remains largely concentrated in provinces of the country's north and east. Finally, the ACLED dataset also provides some insight as to what is actually driving conflict in Burkina Faso, and thus how development programming could reorient its focus. When crossing main actor by interaction code, we can learn more about the role of state and non-state actors in conflict. The graph above shows an alarming trend. In conflict events attributed to Burkina Faso's national police forces, most of which were carried out as part of the country's ongoing counterterrorism operations, 49% of fatalities over the past 3 years occurred as a result of events tagged as violence against civilians. Not only do these statistics corroborate reports of police violence, but they show that police forces in Burkina Faso are likely contributing to insecurity just as much as they are helping to resolve it. So to conclude, the numbers show that in terms of both scale and frequency, the prevalence of violent conflict has threatened the effectiveness of development work. Rather than investing more in grassroots resiliency programming, the gravity of conflict demands more investment in top-down state-led measures to address insecurity. Further, as decision-making should always be data-driven, Further qualitative research could be conducted to contextualize these findings from the ACLA dataset, which is obviously the biggest weakness of this analysis, the lack of contextualization. Such research can investigate the relationship between police officers and civilians to help inform future program activities and outcomes. I would argue as a development professional that military intervention does not suffice as a means of conflict resolution. So this analysis concludes that future peace-building programs ought to consider two types of programming. The first is DDRR programming, disengagement, disassociation, reintegration, and reconciliation, which encourages combatants of militant groups to lay down their arms and return to civilian life after receiving extensive psychosocial services, job training, and other benefits. And of course, would be security sector reform, which could lead to more equitable criminal justice system that guarantees the right to a fair trial and curb use of policing tactics such as summary execution, which are further contributing to conflict in the region. Thank you very much for your time.